This is the last part of the June update on the Bioactive Vivarium. At the end of part 2, I had finished putting the plants that were ready into the enclosure, which cleared enough space in the growth chamber for a box full of plants my friend Karen sent me. Now that I've got the grow chamber emptied out of plants, well, mostly emptied out of plants, now I can take these new plants that I got and I can get them into the grow chamber. I honestly don't even know what's here. I've glanced at some of the bags, but I haven't even looked them up in the computer, so I don't even know if they're rare or common or what. But I got all my tools together. I got my tools for tying, scissors for cutting, tweezers for pushing things down into substrate. I've got my long fiber sphagnum moss been soaked with deionized water. I've got some hydrotone because I like to put drainage layers inside pots, and I've got lots of different size pots. I like to reuse pots, but I sterilize them first. Well, I don't just sterilize them. I chemically sterilize them with bleach, and then I rinse them out. Lots of various different sizes from little ones to big ones. I hope I have enough. My deionized water, and then I've got some substrate mix. Now this is basically ABG. But I put a little more sphagnum moss and a little more peat moss into it than the other stuff. Mostly because I was running out of ABG, so I wanted to stretch it a little bit. But these aren't the permanent home for the plants anyway. These are just to get them rooted. Oh, one more thing. I forgot it. Let me go get it. Rooting hormone. Maybe it's cheating, but I just want the roots to start growing. And bourbon. It's Saturday night. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the camera and just kind of give a close-up view to what I'm doing. And I'm probably only going to film a few of the different methods for which I pot things up or different kind of substrates. I might actually try to tie some onto this board like that Peperomia was, because she sent me like She sent me like three different Peperomias that maybe I'll try to grow them on a board like I got that one from my other friend. So let me get started. So the first plant up is Philodendron heteroraceum, variety heteroraceum. This was Philodendron micans. And looks like she put all the cuttings in with some long fiber sphagnum moss. I just realized I need to go put on my gloves. I prefer to use gloves. I'll pull this one out first. All right. And wow, there's quite a bit here. Look, some of this has already got some pretty good roots on it. I probably could plant that directly into the vivarium, but I'm not going to because I like to quarantine my plants, just like I quarantine my fish. So this looks pretty good. I actually might keep one of these big and then break up one of these as a cuttings to get starts for more plants. Let me take this and set this aside. Long fiber sphagnum moss. You know, there are some people who believe that this is a limited resource, and it might be. This actually looks kind of like a different kind of long fiber sphagnum moss. So I actually keep this. I don't use it because it may not be clean. It may have something in it. But you can sterilize this pretty easily and use it again. So I'm just going to set it off. And actually, I could probably just use this bag, as a matter of fact. I'll just use this for all the sphagnum moss I pull out of these bags today. Now, one thing I should show you is I have tabs for plants. And I try to write on them, but my handwriting is really bad, and then I'll run out of tabs. So what I actually prefer to do is put a number on a tab. So this is going to be a number 5. It's like that. And then in my notebook, I will write down that number 5 is philodendron. Heteroraceum. Variety heteroraceum. Okay, and then when I have it in my incubator, excuse me, when I have it in my grow chamber, all I'm going to see is the number. And I'll put these in a spreadsheet and I'll keep track of them down the road. But I can't write good enough to put this whole word on this one tab. And then once I no longer need this tab for this plant, I can use this number 5 for a new plant at some point. So that's how I do it. All right, so let's kind of set this aside. And I'm going to get my gloves and be right back. So this is the biggest, nicest plant, and it's got a really nice root there, good nodes all over. This one's a little bit smaller, but it also has good roots. And I believe in propagation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one whole, but I'm going to turn this one into more cuttings. So I'm going to snip it in between nodes. So like there's a cutting and the roots will grow from right like that, right there. There's one, that's another plant to be. 3, 4. Maybe I'll just keep that. I'm going to keep this one all as one, but I'm going to get rid of this little leaf. So I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of these philodendrons to do. So I'm going to actually try to get all of these in one little grow pot. So I'm going to do it in one of these bigger containers. Now what I've done is I've taken a deli cup and I've cut gaps in the corners. And I'm going to put a little bit of hydrotone in the bottom of this, mostly because I don't really want to fill the whole thing. So this hydrotone has got some dirt and stuff in it, but I actually bleach this as well and rinse it out, so it's pretty much sterile. And then I'm going to put in a little bit of my soil like that, and then I'm going to layer these in here. So this guy is going to go in kind of around the edge here like that. And then I'm going to put each of these starts. And I'm not using the rooting hormone with these plants because these plants already have roots. The only time I'll use a rooting hormone is if I have a plant that isn't started with roots at all, or if I'm starting like from a leaf or something. I don't know if that'll happen today or not. Get this one in here. This is the one I'm going to keep kind of bigger. A little bit more of my soil here. Now I'm going to water that down before I put the sphagnum moss on top, because sphagnum moss absorbs so much water. Now I'm going to take some of my long fiber sphagnum moss. And what I like about this stuff, well, lots of things I like about it, but for this purpose is it really helps hold the moisture in. Even though I don't really need it in that chamber, I can go a lot longer between spraying and watering if I need to. Okay. All right, and then, voila. All right, so this is pretty simple enough. And this is how I do most of the plants that are going to go in that incubator, or excuse me, in that growth chamber. I keep calling it an incubator. I guess it is an incubator. It's a plant incubator. I like to call it a growth chamber. So this is how I do it. And it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for the plants to set a root. And it usually takes about 2 or 3 weeks for me to tell whether or not there's any pests or disease on the plant. And that's it. So I'm going to work through the rest of the plants. And if I see any that I'm going to do differently, I'll turn the camera back on and show you. This is Ficus species Panama. And it's interesting because it needs a little bit of extra care. Notice that the leaves are a bit yellow. Karen sent me a note to tell me to give this one some fertilizer when I plant it. I have big plans for this plant. It's a climber with small leaves, and I'm hoping to use it to cover part of the artificial tree trunk vertical surface that is wide and relatively flat. Karen sent me a lot of this ficus, so I will cut it up into several pieces that I hope to be able to plant along the base of the trunk. Each of those starts should climb up on its own and interweave with each other if I plant them close enough. I will plant this crawling, creeping plant right on the surface of the substrate. For the extra nutrients that Karen advised, I will dissolve some all-purpose houseplant fertilizer in a small spray bottle that I will use to water them. I was sent 4 different peperomias. Who knew there were so many different peperonias? And I don't have any of these peperonias already. So this gives me 6 different peperonias. I think what I'm going to do is I really want to try to use this and tie it around. So I'm going to do that with the emarginella. I'm going to do that with this. And then the rest of them I'm going to plant kind of the way the peperonia came in the basket, where it was just on sphagnum moss. It wasn't on any kind of substrate. And then hopefully I'll be able to get them up into the vivarium. But I'm not sure if I really want 5, 6 different peperomias in that vivarium. But hey, why not if I've got them, right? All right, so I'm going to start with this one. So, Peperomia emarginella small leaf. And it looks like she had this planted in some kind of, almost like a substrate of some kind. All right, so I'm going to try it on this board. And I'm going to start by putting on some long fiber sphagnum moss onto the board. That's too much. Right, like that. Now I need my thread tool. Actually, I take that back. I'm going to start by getting my thread started on my board. Okay, so now I'm going to put on, there's my sphagnum moss, it's there. Now I'm going to lay my peperomia on it. I'm going to get this a little tighter. I think the whole idea of this is to get it growing into that sphagnum moss. So there's 4 wraps. Got to keep this pretty tight. Okay. I'm not really worried about tag ends on the thread because this is not what's going to go into the vivarium. I'm going to let this grow into that sphagnum moss and hopefully clip the threads and put this into the vivarium the same way I put that Peperomia gutulata. This is the shingling plant, Gradinophora cryptantha, and it's really cool because it grows flat up against the surface of a tree trunk or something. And apparently it grows like this when it is flat against the surface, and when it's not flat against the surface, it just kind of crawls around looking for a surface. But once it finds a surface, it grows much better. So what I'm going to do to start these off is I'm going to use a piece of water-soaked wooden shim. So these have been soaked overnight in water. I'm going to start a thread. Then I'm going to use a little bit of sphagnum moss. And I'm going to take the base end of that Radidophora down here this far, but the leafy part I'm going to try to leave up here where it can climb onto that piece of shim. Now I'm hoping that I'm not going to need to put the piece of wood in the enclosure. I'm hoping that I can convince this plant to come off of the wood and I can plant it directly into my vivarium. And maybe I should have done that, just plant it directly into the vivarium, because I do trust where I got these plants from. But practice what you preach, and I preach quarantine. So we're going to quarantine. And then I'll just take this and put it down in a pot like that. Give it a tag so I know what it is, and we're good to go. Let me take the doors out of this Vision cage. You know, I haven't mentioned it in a couple of videos, but this has worked out really, really well. And if you're looking for an enclosure that can hold humidity and grow plants in a nice little compact growth chamber, these Vision cages are pretty nice. But there we go. All totaled, Karen sent me 12 species of plants to work with, and I've gotten them all into the quarantine chamber and have some room to spare, which is a good thing because there is apparently another care package of plants on the way to me from my friends Nick and Jen. Plants are addictive. All right, well, that was pretty much a full Saturday afternoon and Saturday evening messing with the vivarium and its plants. I hope that you enjoyed the content, and if you did, please subscribe and hit the bell button so you get notifications of future updates. And how about a thumbs up if you like it? I really like to see that. It lets me know you're paying attention and that you appreciate the work that I'm doing. Tomorrow, I'm going to have to work on the aquarium. I've been doing regular water changes on it, but nothing more than pulling the water down and filling the water back up. And now I'm starting to see some things that I need to start taking care of as far as cleaning up detritus in the bottom of the tank and things like that. So I will follow up this update on the vivarium pretty quickly with an update on the aquarium. So as always, thank you very much for watching Ted's Fish Room, and I'll see you next time.